Picture this. You pull into a dimly lit parking lot somewhere off a stretch of highway you barely remember turning onto. The neon sign above the office flickers twice before the letter M burns out completely. You grab your key from a man behind bulletproof glass who doesn't make eye contact once. You find your room, you lock the door, you sit on the edge of the bed and you think to yourself, this place feels wrong. And then you hear something from the room next door that makes every hair on your body stand up. Welcome to the world of motel horror. And I promise you, everything you are about to hear actually happened to real people.
Stay with me all the way to the end of this video because I have saved the most disturbing story for last. And if you think you know what motel horror looks like, you have absolutely no idea what is coming. Let us start with a story that comes from a woman named Diane, who was driving cross-country alone in the summer of 2019. She had been on the road for about 11 hours when she decided to stop somewhere in rural Nevada, one of those stretches of highway where the next town is still 40 miles ahead and the desert just swallows everything around you. She found a small motel advertising vacancy and pulled in. The parking lot had maybe 3 other cars. She checked in, paid cash, got a room, and settled in for the night. About 2 hours after she fell asleep, Diane woke up to the sound of her door handle moving. Not knocking, not a voice, just the handle, slowly turning back and forth. She lay frozen in her bed, watching the door in the dark, and it stopped. She told herself it was probably someone at the wrong room. She tried to go back to sleep. Then it started again. This time it went on for almost a full minute. Slow, deliberate testing. Diane reached for her phone to call the front desk and realized she had no signal. She called out and asked who was there. Silence. The handle stopped moving. She did not sleep for the rest of that night. When morning came, she went to the front desk and told the clerk what had happened. The clerk barely looked up. He said, and I want you to really absorb this response. He said, "Yeah, we get that sometimes." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a flat acknowledgement that this was apparently a known occurrence at this motel. Diane asked if there were cameras in the parking lot or hallway. The clerk said the cameras had not worked in 2 years. She left immediately and drove straight through to her next destination without stopping. She later found out after posting her experience in an online travel forum that 2 other people had reported the same thing happening to them at that exact motel within the same year.
Now I want you to hold on to that feeling because what comes next is significantly worse. This next story comes from a Reddit thread that gained enormous traction a few years back. A man we will call Marcus was traveling for work and stayed at a budget motel just outside of a mid-sized city in the American South. He arrived late, around 11 at night, checked in, and noticed that his room had an odd smell. Not a cleaning chemical smell, something underneath that. Musty and thick and wrong. He was exhausted, though, and he figured it was just an old building, so he pushed through it. Around 3 in the morning, Marcus woke up absolutely freezing. The air conditioning unit was running on full blast, even though he had not touched it. He got up to turn it off, and when he walked past the bathroom, he noticed the door was cracked open. He was certain he had left it open all the way when he first checked in because he had briefly looked inside. Something about the angle of the crack felt deliberate, like it had been moved while he slept. He pushed the bathroom door open slowly and found nothing. The bathroom was empty. He turned the air conditioning off and went back to bed. That is when he noticed the closet door across the room was now open. He could see the wire hangers in the dark. He knew with absolute certainty that closet door had been closed when he checked in because he had specifically hung his jacket inside it and then closed it. He was not a man who scared easily. He made that clear in his post. But he described what he felt in that moment as a primal kind of fear, the kind that comes from somewhere ancient inside you. He turned on every light in the room and sat in the chair by the door until morning. He found nothing. Nobody in the room, no explanation for either of those doors being in different positions than where he had left them. But here is the part that really stuck with people. When he went to check out, he mentioned to the woman at the desk that he had a strange night, and she immediately went quiet. He said her whole demeanor changed in an instant. She processed his checkout without another word, and as he was walking out the door, she called after him quietly and said, "You should leave a review. Please leave a review." Like she was desperate for people to know. Like she could not say it outright, but she needed him to document what happened. He never found out why. He left the review. The motel has since been closed. Let me tell you something about what the darkness inside a cheap motel room does to the human mind. There is a reason these places generate so many stories. You are isolated. You are in an unfamiliar space. The walls are thin. You have no idea who is on the other side of them. And sometimes, as we are about to see, what is on the other side of those walls is something you genuinely wish you had never discovered. This next story is from a woman named Patricia, who was staying at a roadside motel in rural Tennessee with her teenage daughter. They were on their way to a family reunion and stopped for one night. Patricia described the motel as older but clean enough, nothing that raised immediate alarm. They got settled in, ordered a pizza to the room, watched some television, and eventually fell asleep.
Patricia woke up around midnight to the sound of voices coming through the wall on the left side of her room. At first, she thought it was just other guests having a conversation, but then she started to pick up the tone. It was not conversational. It was a man's voice, low and controlled, and a younger voice responding in short, clipped answers that sounded like fear responding to authority. Patricia sat up and listened more carefully. She was not able to make out specific words, but the dynamic of what she was hearing made her stomach drop. She looked over at her daughter, who was still asleep. She called the front desk from the room phone and told them she was concerned about what she was hearing next door. The front desk attendant said he would send someone to check. 20 minutes passed. Nobody came. She called again. This time, no one answered the front desk phone at all. Patricia made a decision in that moment that she has said since saved her and her daughter from what could have been a very dangerous situation. She woke her daughter quietly, told her to get her shoes on and grab only her bag, and they left the room quickly and drove away from that motel entirely at midnight. They found a chain hotel 30 miles up the road. The next morning, Patricia called local law enforcement and reported what she had heard and where. She was later contacted by a detective who told her that her call had been part of a pattern of reports about that location. Without getting into specific details that could compromise any ongoing investigation, the detective confirmed that her instincts had been correct and that she had made the right call leaving when she did. Patricia has said she never stays at independent roadside motels alone anymore.
I need to pause here for a second because I think it is important to say something. Some of the stories we talk about on this channel are scary in a supernatural way. Some of them are psychological, but some of them are scary because of what human beings are capable of doing to each other. And that last category is always the most chilling to me because there is no rationalizing it away. There is no telling yourself it was just your imagination. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in a place, it probably is. Now, let us keep going, because we are only halfway through, and the stories get heavier from here. This one comes from a man named Thomas, who was a truck driver for many years and stayed in countless roadside motels all across the country. He's the kind of person who is hard to rattle. He has seen a lot, but he has told this particular story in multiple trucker forums and described it as the one experience that still gets to him years later. Thomas was staying at a small motel somewhere in rural Oklahoma on a cold night in late November. He had taken a room at the far end of the building, which he preferred because it was quieter. He got in, locked the door, checked the room the way he always did out of habit, and went to sleep early because he had a long drive the next day. He woke up around 2 a.m. to complete and total silence. Not normal quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like something has been removed from the world. No highway sounds, no wind, nothing. He lay there in the dark, listening to the silence, and then heard it. Footsteps on the roof, directly above his room. Slow and deliberate, not scurrying animal sounds. These were heavy, flat, evenly spaced footfalls moving from one end of the roof above him to the other, and then back. He counted them. 22 steps one way, 22 steps back, like something pacing. Thomas got up and looked out his window. The parking lot was empty, except for his truck. No ladders against the building, no maintenance equipment, nothing that would explain how anyone would be up there, or why. The footsteps continued for over an hour. Thomas sat against the headboard with the lamp on and did not move. Then, at some point, and he cannot explain how he missed the transition, the footsteps simply were not there anymore. No sound of them stopping, no last step, just gone. He went outside at first light and walked around the entire perimeter of the motel. The roof was flat and accessible at the back corner of the building where a drainage pipe ran up the wall. And on that flat roof, clearly visible in the thin layer of frost that had settled overnight, were footprints. Heavy boot prints, coming from the back corner and going all the way to the section directly above his room. Back and forth, and then stopping. The prints did not lead back to the drainage pipe. They just stopped in the middle of the roof, as if whatever made them had simply ceased to exist right there. Thomas took photographs. He showed the motel manager, who looked at the pictures without a word, and then told Thomas his room would be comped for the night. No explanation. Just a free room, as if that was an acceptable response to what Thomas had just shown him. Thomas has never stayed at that motel again. He still has the photographs.
Okay, I want to give you a moment to breathe, because we are about to go into the section of this video that several people who heard these stories in advance told me genuinely disturbed them in a way they were not expecting. So if you are watching this late at night, alone, and you are already feeling it, you have been warned. This next story involves a couple, Ryan and Sarah, who were on a road trip through the Pacific Northwest in the fall of 2021. They stopped at a motel in a small coastal town that had good reviews online and seemed perfectly fine when they checked in. The couple in the room next to them seemed friendly enough. They had exchanged a brief hello in the parking lot. Normal evening. They went to their room, Ryan fell asleep quickly, and Sarah stayed up reading. Around 1 a.m, Sarah heard something that she initially thought was the television in the next room. A voice, low and repetitive, saying the same phrase over and over. She could not make out the words exactly, but the rhythm of it was unusual, like a chant or a counting exercise. She ignored it at first, but it went on for over 30 minutes without stopping. The same phrase, the same rhythm, the same tone, never varying, never stopping. She woke Ryan, and he listened too. They both agreed it was strange. Ryan went to knock on the connecting wall, and the moment his knuckle touched the drywall, the voice stopped instantly. Complete silence. They looked at each other. Ryan knocked again. Nothing. They eventually went back to sleep, but Sarah described what followed as one of the most unsettling nights of sleep she had ever experienced. She had vivid, disturbing dreams all night, which she acknowledged could be coincidental, but said felt different, felt connected to something in that space.
In the morning, they were packing up when they saw the couple from next door loading their car. Sarah said good morning. The woman from the couple turned to look at her with an expression Sarah described as strange, like she was looking through her rather than at her. The woman said, "Did you sleep well?" Not warmly, not as small talk, said it in a way that Sarah felt was genuinely asking, almost testing. Sarah said it was fine. The woman smiled and said, "It gets easier." Then her partner called her name, and they got in their car and left before Sarah could ask what that meant. It gets easier. What gets easier? Sarah and Ryan drove away with that question unanswered and have spent a considerable amount of time since then turning those two words over in their minds. I told you the stories get heavier. We are not done yet. Let us talk about the motel with no name. This is a story shared by a travel blogger named James, who makes a point of staying in unusual or off-the-beaten-path accommodations as part of his content.
He was in a rural area of the American Southwest and came across a motel that appeared on no digital map. He found it physically, pulled off a side road, and discovered a fully operational motel. Lights on, a car in the lot, a vacancy sign lit up, but no name on the building anywhere. No sign, no logo, no branding of any kind. Just a building that functioned as a motel. He went in out of curiosity, and the man at the desk was friendly and normal and checked him in with a receipt that listed no business name, just a room number and a total. James paid in cash because he figured it would be an interesting story for his blog. The room was clean, completely ordinary, nothing immediately strange about it. He took some photos, wrote some notes, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, he woke up hearing the door to his room being unlocked from the outside. Not jiggled, not tried, actually unlocked with a key. The door swung open, and a man James had never seen stepped partially into the room, saw James sitting up in bed staring at him, froze, and then stepped back out, pulling the door closed behind him. James heard rapid footsteps moving away down the exterior walkway.
He locked the deadbolt, put the chain on, and sat there with his phone out, ready to call emergency services. He heard no other sounds for the rest of the night. In the morning, he confronted the man at the desk, who was not the same man from the night before, and described what had happened. The new clerk looked genuinely confused and said that should not be possible because there was only one key per room. James said he understood that, but that it had happened. The clerk offered to let him look at a key log. James looked at the key log. His room key had been checked out twice. Once to him, once about 2 hours after him, to a name that was listed simply as Service. James published this story on his blog. He included the approximate location of the motel. Within 6 months, the blog post had hundreds of comments from people who said they had either stayed at the same place or recognized the description from someone they knew. Several commenters claimed the motel had a reputation among locals as a place to avoid. James has since said he will never again stay anywhere that does not have a clearly identified operating name. Now we are getting to the final story, and I want to frame it properly because it is the one that has sat with me the longest since I first came across it. This is not a story about a strange noise or an unexplained presence. This is a story about something that was found inside a motel room that reframed everything the person staying there thought they understood about where they were. A woman named Claire was staying at a mid-range motel while dealing with a personal emergency. She had traveled quickly, packed light, and was not in the headspace to be picky about accommodations. She checked in, got to her room, and spent the first evening dealing with phone calls and paperwork. She was in the room for about 2 days before she noticed it. She had been sitting at the small desk in the room and reached to adjust the lamp. When she moved the lamp, she found a piece of paper underneath it, folded once. She unfolded it and found handwriting on it. The message was clearly written by a previous guest. It said, "If you are reading this, please know that the mirror in this room is not a normal mirror. Look at the back of the mirror before you do anything else." And the message was signed with just initials and a date that was approximately 4 months earlier. Claire sat with that paper for a long time. She described her thought process honestly. She said part of her wanted to dismiss it as a prank or a joke left by someone who thought it was funny. But another part of her, the part that was already stressed and raw from dealing with the emergency that had brought her there, felt something genuine in the tone of the handwriting. It was not written dramatically, it was written carefully, purposefully, like someone leaving instructions. She got up and looked at the mirror, which was the standard large wall-mounted rectangular mirror above the dresser that you find in almost every motel room. She looked at the front of it and saw nothing unusual. Then she carefully lifted the edge of the frame away from the wall to look behind it. The mirror was not attached to the wall with standard hardware. It was sitting in a bracket, and when she lifted the edge, she could see that in the wall behind the mirror, where the drywall should have been smooth and solid, there was a cutout. A rectangular section of drywall had been carefully removed and replaced, and in that space, mounted flush and invisible from the front, was a small camera. Claire called the police. Officers came to the room and confirmed what she had found. The camera was real. It was active. It had a small wireless transmitter attached to it. The motel was investigated. Claire was not the first person to have been recorded in that room. The footage, which law enforcement recovered, went back considerably further than 4 months. The motel owner was uncooperative with investigators. The case became part of a broader investigation into voyeurism and illegal surveillance at hospitality establishments in that region.
The person who left that note, whoever they were, had likely made that discovery 4 months earlier. And rather than reporting it, or perhaps in addition to reporting it and not being believed, had left a warning for the next person. And Claire found it. And because she trusted the instinct that told her not to dismiss it, she found the camera. She sat with law enforcement for several hours that day. She said the thing she kept thinking about, the thing she could not get out of her mind, was all the people who had stayed in that room in the 4 months between when that note was written and when she found it. All the people who had not found the note. All the people who never knew. That is the part that does not go away. That is what makes this story different from all the others. It is not about something that might have been supernatural, or might have been a stranger on a roof, or might have been a prankster with a spare key. It is about a systematic, deliberate violation of people in a place where they had every reasonable expectation of privacy. And it is about the fragile, almost accidental chain of circumstance that led one person to discover it. Here is what I want you to take away from everything you just heard. Motels occupy this particular psychological space in our culture that makes them uniquely fertile ground for stories like these. They exist at the edges. They are built for transients. Nobody knows anybody's name. Nobody asks questions. The whole system is designed around the idea of passing through without leaving a mark. And that invisibility, that namelessness, creates conditions where things can happen that do not happen in places where you are known. I am not telling you never to stay in a motel. Some of the most beautiful places in this country are accessible only by that kind of road trip and that kind of stop. But I am telling you that the people in these stories share a common thread. Most of them ignored their first instinct. That feeling in the parking lot, that smell in the room, that sound through the wall, that slight wrongness that you cannot quite name. Most of them told themselves they were being irrational and pushed through it. And most of them look back now and wish they had listened to that first quiet voice that said, something is not right here. Check the hardware on your mirrors. Put the chain on the door. Pay attention to whether the locks feel solid. Notice where the cameras are and whether they are in appropriate places. Notice if there are any gaps or holes in the walls or in light fixtures or in smoke detectors that should not be there. These are not paranoid behaviors. These are reasonable responses to documented real-world situations. And if you hear something through a wall that makes you feel the way Patricia felt in Tennessee, do not wait for the front desk to respond, and do not go back to sleep. Just go. A bad night's drive is recoverable. The alternative sometimes is not. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, first of all, thank you. And second of all, I want to know which story got to you the most. Leave it in the comments. I read all of them. This channel exists because of people who are willing to sit with these stories and really let them land, because there is something valuable in that. Not in being frightened for the sake of it, but in taking stories seriously and letting them teach you something about how to move through the world with your eyes open. Hit subscribe if you are new here, because we do this every week, and some of what is coming up in the next few weeks is genuinely going to be hard to watch alone. Share this video with someone who is about to take a road trip, not to scare them, to prepare them. And if you have a story of your own, a real motel experience that left you shaken, tell me in the comments, because the most disturbing content on this channel has always come from real people who lived through something they cannot explain. Sleep well, lock your doors, and maybe, just for tonight, push that chair up under the handle before you close your eyes.
The end. Please like and subscribe.